Hi everybody, this is my first video for A Crisp and Healthy Life, and I thought that I would just give a little bit of background about my story, how I came to be diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, a very tiny bit of what that is, and what I'm currently doing to try to manage it as naturally as possible. So, first of all, I started experiencing some strange symptoms. I think I first noticed them when I was at work, in that I couldn't use a stapler. I didn't have the grip strength in my hand. It just kind of disappeared one day to use the stapler. So that kind of freaked me out, but it kind of came and went, and so I didn't think too much of it. And then later, I noticed I couldn't lift a dinner plate. I didn't have the strength to lift a dinner plate or to lift like an iced tea pitcher out of the fridge to pour. I just seemed to be very weak in my hands all of a sudden. And this really surprised me because a couple months prior to this, I had been doing CrossFit and I had been loving it. And I had been doing the burpees and the weights and everything using my hands, obviously. So it was very weird. At that point, I thought, oh, maybe I injured my wrist or my shoulder doing some of those CrossFit things. So I went to the doctor and I couldn't um, I had lost flexion in my wrist or flexibility. So, when you go into like a push up position or anything, I can't still to this day bend my wrist that way. It doesn't work. So the doctor said, oh, yeah, you probably injured something. This is my PCP, but let me order some blood tests and we'll see what's going on. Because also at the same time, I was super tired all the time, just very low energy and yawning all the time. It was really odd. Even if I slept, I was still tired. So I get a phone call, which is never really a good thing from the doctor, right? That my blood tests are back and I need to come in to get blood tested again right away and see a rheumatologist. Supposedly, my inflammation markers were off the charts, super duper high. So that began my journey, and I was officially diagnosed in January of 2016. Um, that was an interesting day for any of those of you who have rheumatoid arthritis or maybe other autoimmune diseases and are diagnosed in a Western doctor's office setting. You most likely know what I'm about to tell you, which is that they are very bleak on the outcomes. Basically, he told me that it's a chronic inflammatory disease that is autoimmune in nature. So my body is attacking itself. For some reason, it's misassessing that the cells in the joints, specifically, it affects your joints. So the cells in my joint tissues, for some reason, it thinks they're foreign invaders, and so it's mounting an immune response, which causes all of this inflammation, leads to destruction of your cartilage and joint fluid, and eventually erodes the bone, causing potentially permanent damage and loss of function. So I'm trying to absorb all of this. My doctor is telling me that I'm going to have to be on medication for the rest of my life. That's the only way to hope to manage it. There's no guarantee that the medications are going to work, and there are a whole list of side effects that come with the medications also. Luckily for me, I guess you could say, my mom also was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis maybe 6 years prior to this. And she had managed to become symptom free by changing her diet completely. She changed to a whole food, plant based vegan diet and was able to get off of her medication. And the blood work showed no more signs of the disease in her system. So I knew this, luckily, because if I didn't know this, it was seeming like a death sentence. So I asked the doctor, I said, is there anything I can do on my end to try and help manage this? Is there anything I can do, diet wise, exercise wise, that might have an effect on the progression of the disease? Absolutely not. Doesn't matter what you eat, you're going to have to take the medication for the rest of your life. Doesn't matter what you do, exercise might actually be worse for you because it's going to put increased pressure on your joints, which isn't going to be a good thing. So I kept pushing and I told the story about my mom, and the doctor basically said that people go through periods of remission if they're lucky. Sometimes those periods of remission can be drug free, but the symptoms are going to come back and you're going to have to go back on drugs. Eventually, through this conversation, the one thing the doctor said may have an impact, but not even on the activity of the disease, simply on releasing some pressure from my joints, was to lose some weight. So I left there with my medications, methotrexate, which is a low dose. It's used for low doses for rheumatoid arthritis, and higher doses it's used for a chemotherapy drug. So it comes with a whole host of side effects, including potential damage to your liver, so they have to monitor you through blood work regularly. In addition to that, they wanted to put me on prednisone, which is a steroid, in order to bring the inflammation down and give the methotrexate time to work. Supposedly there's like a 3-month window where the methotrexate has to get into your system to be effective. And at this point, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to believe that I could simply switch my diet and not have to worry about the drugs, but at the same time, the pain was unbearable. It was getting to the point where I couldn't um, do my bra strap. I couldn't pull up and down my pants. Anything that required my hand to do this motion was just excruciatingly painful, and some days I couldn't even do this motion fully. It also started affecting, it's different what joints it affects for everyone. So for me, it's primarily my wrist on my right side and my fingers. It has also affected my feet a little bit. And then at one point, it was affecting the right side of my jaw so much. It was so inflamed, I couldn't open my mouth enough to get a fork full of food in. And so that was really scary. So I decided to take the medication. All the while knowing that my ultimate goal is to get off the medication, to figure out whatever I have to figure out, weight loss, diet change, exercise, herbal supplements, whatever I can do. I want to get off the medication because ultimately, if I want to have a family, which I do, can't get pregnant on the drugs, can cause miscarriage and birth defects, it just throws everything out of whack in your body. And so I started taking the medication, but I also decided to join a Master of Science program in Nutrition and Integrative Health. So I started that in September of 2016. And I've got to say that has been the best thing I've done for myself, is just to become more educated about the body in general. It's amazing what the body does physiologically. I had never taken a physiology class. Somehow I managed to miss that in high school and college. So it was really eye-opening at a cellular level what our body manages to do on a daily basis without our awareness. And so this got me to really believe, and I strongly do believe, that the body wants to heal itself and the body is able to heal itself given the right conditions. So I think it is our job to create the optimal conditions to allow the body to focus on healing what it needs to heal and not worry about the other things that it might be combating. So for me, not only did this mean dietary change, this meant reducing stress, because I noticed that stress is one of my huge triggers for a flare-up of symptoms. It also meant trying to work on my sleeping patterns, because I noticed too that lack of sleep, my body was not happy the next day. So it really looked at a holistic approach to this, and that's kind of where I'm at, is I'm still trying to figure it all out. So I created a crisp and healthy life to try and document my journey, give myself something to look back on to see what was working when I was feeling really well, what happened when I noticed I was feeling more symptomatic. And also to hopefully help others who may be dealing with rheumatoid arthritis or other autoimmune diseases or other chronic health conditions. I really do think that the Western system is unfortunately, and this is my personal opinion, unfortunately, I think it is kind of created solely on a money and greed system. So the only way that the system works is if we're sick, and so we buy these drugs and we continue making them a profit. And so I have to believe there's a better way. Um, Currently in my journey, I recently moved back to New Hampshire from Hawaii. So the move process was very stressful and caused a huge influx of my pain symptoms. I ended up taking, at the time I was only on methotrexate, I ended up taking prednisone as a safety measure if I did have a flare up, something that works instantaneously to help reduce the pain. Thankfully, I brought it with me because it really saved me at that point. However, having been on higher doses of it, I know that that drug isn't healthy for me personally either. Because when I was in Hawaii, my doctor, a new doctor, had decided he wanted to up my methotrexate and up my prednisone because while I was managing the disease moderately, he says, there was still some active inflammation which was eroding my joints, specifically in my wrist. And so he wanted, and this is kind of the, I've thought, the standard of care, treat it as aggressively as possible to get it to a point where the disease activity has stopped. So he upped all of my meds, and I noticed that I started getting severe mood swings and some paranoid thoughts. And I was not working in the mental health field. I was like, no, I don't want to deal with this. This is not normal. A medication, this is doing more harm than good for me personally. So I called him and was able to wean off of that medication and was just on the methotrexate. Since moving back to New Hampshire, my diet has been overhauled completely. Huge shout out to my parents, especially my mom, for all of their support and her cooking and teaching me different things about vegan cooking and plant based cooking because I really believe that has had a major impact on how I feel overall and the pain that I'm experiencing. So, right now, I'm actually off of medication. Unintentionally, and I don't recommend you do this without doctor supervision if you're in any sort of situation that's similar to mine. However, I ran out of it because I am switching insurances, moving from state to state, and I just haven't been able to set up the doctor appointment, get the medication, get the blood work, all of that. So, currently, I'm about, what's the date? The 5th. I'm almost probably three and a half, 4 weeks off of the medication. And I'm feeling fine. There is obviously a half-life to the drug, so I am prepared that symptoms may start to flare, and I do intend to go see a doctor to get my blood work done, to see how my liver is doing, and possibly get back on it while I find natural ways to manage it. But since the goal ultimately is to get off medication, I figured since I'm in the situation where I have to be off of it, I might as well go full force into supporting my body as best as I can and see what happens. In doing that, I am doing tons of research, which is why I love my program at school because it allows me to cater my education, in a sense, towards what I'm interested in. And so for my pathophysiology class, for example, we have a big project to do or a final exam. I decided to do the big project because I'm not a big fan of big essay, final exam, time, pressure, questions. And I'm doing my project on rheumatoid arthritis, so that's allowing me to do a lot of research and see what the research is. Also, I'm taking a statistics and research design class, which is helping me read through that research and figure out if it's valid, what biases I should be aware of from the researcher's perspective, and all of that good stuff. So that has turned me on slightly to something called intermittent fasting. Now, primarily, the idea was brought up by my dad, who swears by it as a way of life. He just enjoys how he feels when he's doing it. He's lost a lot of weight doing it. I think he would say he feels more clear minded and productive, lots more energy. So initially I thought, oh, maybe this is something to try for weight loss. But as weight loss isn't my big goal is being healthy, I decided to see if there was any research that supported a positive correlation between fasting and rheumatoid arthritis. And the one thing you'll notice is that research into alternative therapies is limited because, as I alluded to before, there's no money in it. Um, if you're healthy, then the whole Western pharmaceutical system falls down and is corrupt, anyways. But we can go into that in a different video. um, so, there was a little bit of information on potential benefits of fasting related to reducing inflammation. And as inflammation is at the heart of this disease, I decided can't hurt to try. And that's kind of the most empowering thing about this is that realizing it's your body, what you put in your body is your choice, and what you do with your body is your choice. So I'm not advocating that anyone else do the things that I'm doing, but I'm at a place where I'm feeling like, what's the harm in trying? Because I know I can always fall back on the medication, which has their own set of side effects. So, what's the harm in trying something that might not be well researched, that might not have the backing financially that all of these big medications do, but might be a natural thing that actually helps? What's the harm? So, I've been doing that for about almost 2 weeks. And I've got to say, I haven't noticed too big of a difference pain wise. My pain is pretty well managed with the diet, I think. But I've noticed a huge difference in my energy levels during the day, which is huge for RA because, as I mentioned before, normally you're just tired all the time. It's one of the symptoms, fatigue. And so I've kind of been living a low energy life for, even before I was diagnosed, for a few years. So to have energy back is kind of one of those things where you gotta say, whoa, what's going on? It's one of the changes that you notice. That, and also, I've been sleeping so much better. And sleep problems is normally associated with RA also. You can have insomnia, whether it's from the medication that you're taking, prednisone, for example, or just a function of the disease. It's kind of unknown. There's a lot of unknowns, and that's what's frustrating but exciting also because there's a lot of room to see what our lifestyle can do to impact the disease. So right now I'm working on that, intermittent fasting with a whole food plant-based diet, which means I don't consume animal products. Research has shown that the proteins in animal products can be inflammatory and make the RA worse. I also try to eat as unprocessed as I can, and for the most part, again, thanks to my parents, I've been doing really well with that I've been home now for for a little over 2 months. And with the exception of our Halloween party we just had, where we added some Fritos and non-dairy cheese to our chili, everything has been pretty clean, meaning fresh, frozen, or canned fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lentils, beans, um, herbs. I'm playing with herbs, so I'm taking turmeric supplements and trying to add ginger and turmeric to smoothies when I can, all things that have been shown to reduce inflammation. So that's kind of where I'm at. I guess I'd be curious to know if there's any particular videos that you guys would want to see or topics you'd want me to write about. I've been kind of mostly using the page as a food log, so I take a lot of pictures of food and try to share some recipes of how we've modified them to be oil-free or vegan. Other than that, it's really just a personal journey, so everyone's individual. What's going to work for one person isn't necessarily going to work for anyone else. And I think the most empowering thing is that the body wants to heal itself, and it can heal itself if you give it the right conditions. So experiment. But know that, unlike the Western medicine, everyone, it seems, wants a quick fix. You know, if I could take a pill and tomorrow be told that my disease had stopped and would never come back, of course I'd want to do that. It's instant gratification. But such a pill doesn't exist. And the pills that the doctors are giving you are not only toxic, but I believe it's a band aid. It's not really getting to the root cause of the disease, because I think the root cause of a lot of diseases is still not fully known. And so you say, oh, I'm having pains in my joint. So they give you steroids to reduce the inflammation and the pain. But it's not changing the mechanism of what's causing your body to attack itself in the first place. So I think that the dietary changes and the lifestyle changes, you need to be patient. You need to give your body time to adapt. You got to figure, I'm 30 and I was diagnosed when I was 29. I think. My math isn't too good. It's really early. Um, but for the years prior to that, I was eating horribly. I was eating the standard American diet. I was eating fast food. I was eating processed food. I was eating candy, drinking soda, um, eating meat, lots of cheese. And so all of those years did damage to my body on some level. It's unrealistic of me to expect my body can heal itself in a matter of a week or even a month or even a year, you know, and I think this is going to be a lifelong journey. It is a chronic disease. Supposedly at the moment there is no cure. So even if you get into a period of remission, you still have it. You're just managing it. So I figure I gotta support my body as best as I can and see what happens. And so that's what I'm doing. I hope this was helpful or interesting, a little insight into what I'm going through and why I made this page. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out either in the comments or messaging me directly. I'm happy to try to answer any questions. I'm still learning a lot, and that's one of the cool things about my program too, is that there's so much to learn. Every time you feel like you learn something else, it unlocks a million other questions and things to learn. So hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Okay, bye.